All right, we're in session. I believe the jurors are back now. Mr. Zellinger is your witness here.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, all right. Ask the jury to come in, please. We're back in session. Show on the record, please, that the jurors have returned. Thank you for your patience, folks. We're ready to proceed now. And Ms. Zellinger, you may call your next witness. Sorry.
State calls Dr. Nabi Mambo.
Doctor, come up, please. Doctor, there's a Bible right there. If you take your oath, please, sir. You're right, just be affirmed then.
You solemnly affirm the testimony you give this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and is that your solemn affirmation?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Have a seat. You may proceed.
Dr. Mambo, if you could pull that microphone, could you introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Nobi Chibo Mambo. I'm a forensic pathologist working in Galveston County in Texas.
Okay. And you're the deputy medical examiner for Galveston County?
That's correct.
And you also teach at the University of Texas Medical Branch?
Yes, I do.
And what do you teach?
I teach basic pathology to the medical students and more advanced pathology to doctors who are training to be pathologists.
And pathology is the branch of medicine where you study the cause and nature of disease?
Basically, pathology is the branch of medicine which deals with the cause and nature of a disease.
And where did you go to medical school?
I went to medical school in Zimbabwe, and then I did my postgraduate training in Canada and also here in the States in pathology, and then did a fellowship in forensic pathology.
And did you do that fellowship in Houston?
No, I did that in Dade County in Miami.
Okay. And are you board certified in anatomic and forensic pathology?
That's correct.
After your work experience in Miami, did you next practice in pathology and forensic pathology in Canada?
Yes, I did.
And then did you move to the United States in 2000 to work in New Jersey as a full-time forensic pathologist?
That's correct.
And then did you move to Texas at some point in 2007 to the Galveston County Medical Examiner's Office?
Yes, sir.
And on a daily basis, do you only work with pathology cases from Galveston County, or do you work with other counties as well?
No, we work with other counties as well.
And do you perform autopsies?
Yes, sir.
And could you briefly explain to the jury what an autopsy is?
An autopsy is the examination of the deceased to try and determine the cause of death and probably also the manner of death.
Okay. And that's a part of forensic pathology to perform autopsies?
Yes, sir.
And are you a member of the National Association of Medical Examiners?
Yes, I am.
And a member of the American College of Pathologists?
Yes, sir.
And a member of the Royal Canadian Society for Physicians and Surgeons?
Yes, sir.
And you've been published numerous times over the years?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, at this time, I would tender Dr. Mambo as an expert in medicine and specifically in the field of forensic pathology.
The court accepts the tender.
2011, were you working as a medical examiner with the Galveston County Medical Examiner's Office?
Yes, I was.
And back in, I guess, the later half of July, adjudication performed 3 autopsies on some body parts that were eventually identified as Laura Ackerson.
Yes.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
Dr. Mambo, I show you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 368, or A368. Is this the first autopsy that you performed on some of Laura Ackerson's body parts?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And then State's Exhibit 369, is this the second autopsy that you performed?
Yes.
Okay. And then State's Exhibit 370, is that the third autopsy that you performed?
Yes.
And to be clear, State's Exhibit 368, the first autopsy you performed, that was in case number PA 2011-273.
That's correct.
And then the second one, which is State's Exhibit 369, that's in PA 2011-280.
Yes.
And then the third one's in, the State's Exhibit 370 is in PA 2011-299.
Yes. And this was performed by my associate who is no longer with the office, but I was present.
Okay. And you signed the autopsy?
Yes.
In fact, you signed all these autopsies?
Yes.
Your Honor, this time I move to enter State's Exhibit 368 through 370.
That'll be received.
Your Honor, I might publish these via the projector.
You may.
Madam Clerk, could you leave the lights on? Just turn on the projector. Thank you. And Dr. Mambo, before you is that first autopsy, and that's the one that's number 273.
Yes.
Okay. And in that autopsy, you received, I guess typically do you receive body bags as a way to receive bodies to perform autopsies?
Yeah, usually all the deceased that come to our office I received in body bags.
And then are those put in an area where they're locked and then you can pull them out to perform the autopsies?
Yes.
Okay. Specifically with this autopsy, State's Exhibit 368, number 273. As we look at the first external examination, did you receive, I guess, 2 parts of a thorax?
Of the torso, there was the upper half and then the lower half
Okay.
of the torso.
And so you received the upper part of the thorax, the lower torso, and then did you also receive a part of a left lower leg?
Yes.
Okay. Talking about the thorax, that was the area that's essentially the top half of the body from the neck down to about halfway through the
Yeah.
torso.
Yeah, down to the belly button from the neck down.
And here, I guess in the first part of this autopsy, it says that there's a 13-inch long segment of the thorax from C7 to L2.
Yes.
Later in this autopsy, we have some diagrams or schematics that show the spinal column.
Yes.
I'll show you those pages. So the part, the upper torso that you received of Laura Ackerson, was that that was from C2 to C7 to L2?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe you have a laser pointer up
Yeah.
there. Can you point to where C7 is?
C7 is here, and then L2 is here.
And judging by this diagram, the top vertebrae on the body, that is the closest to the head, those are the cervical vertebrae.
Yes, those are the ones in the neck. These ones here.
And they start C1,
Okay,
the first cervical vertebrae is, I guess, closest to the brain.
Yes.
And then C7, where does C7 end on the body?
C7 is right at the root of the neck, just before the beginning of the chest.
Okay. And this body was, had a cut site at C6, is that correct?
7,
C7, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Which is right at the base of the neck?
yes,
Okay. And then, the next vertebrae down are those, the thoracic vertebrae?
yes.
Okay, and those are labeled T1.
T1 to T12, and then you get the lumbar, which is from L1 to L5, and the cut was here.
And you marked on this part of the autopsy where the cut site was,
Yes,
and that's where this line is right here at L2.
yes.
And those cut sites, were they smooth cut sites?
They were smooth, in that they were not jagged, but they were smooth, but they had cross striations from whatever instrument was used.
Okay, so the skin near those cut sites, was that jagged?
Yes,
And if you were to cut through someone's skin and then eventually bone, do you often see a jagged edge to the skin?
if the skin is redundant, yes, you do, but if the skin is tight, you get a clean cut.
Okay, so if the skin is loose, it can lead to that jagged.
Yes.
And additionally, the cut you said was not clean cut where the bone is?
Oh, no, in the bone, it was a clean cut with some striations.
Okay, so where the skin was jagged,
Jagged.
but the bone was clean.
Clean cut, yes.
Okay, and you list on here on your autopsy, if I can jump back to the first page, that it's clean cut with no obvious tool marks?
Yes.
Okay. Now later on, you say that the proximal amputation site of C7, that's at the base of the neck, correct?
No, the proximal of C7 is the top part.
The top part of the C7 vertebrae?
Yes.
Okay, so you're looking at the torso, the upper half of this torso, and the top cut part,
Top.
where basically the head should be, is that correct?
The neck, yeah.
Neck. Okay. There's a clean cut there, and there's no obvious tool marks or striations.
No.
Similar observations, you made similar observations at the bottom of that
The
cut.
cut,
is that
yes.
correct? And then, did you note also that there are cuts through the ribs of the body?
Yes, there were some cuts on the left side. I think it was the 8th and 9th ribs.
And those you're able to see tool marks, is that
Yes,
correct?
yes.
And tool marks are, I guess, in the surface of the cut, you see little striations that indicate that an object has gone through there.
Yes.
This body was in a state of decomposition, isn't that true?
Yes.
You note that it was tan with areas of brownish as well as light greenish discoloration.
Yes.
And you noted that there's also some areas of that you believe there to be marine activity because I guess parts of the skin had been taken away.
Yes.
Did you also weigh the chest cavity?
Yes, I did.
And is the purpose of doing that to make sure that there's no other injuries to the lungs or to the heart?
It's a routine thing that we do in every case. We weigh the deceased and we weigh the organs to see if they are within normal limits or they are abnormal.
Based on your observation of this part of the chest, going from the C6 to the L2, did you see any, aside from the dismemberment sites, did you see any other signs of injury or sickness or disease?
No.
And so you looked at, I believe in here, you looked at the trachea, the esophagus, the left lung, the liver, none of those were there?
They didn't show any natural disease process.
Okay. I'm sorry, the trachea and the esophagus were there and you didn't see any
No,
disease?
I didn't see any.
The left lung, diaphragm, and liver were all absent.
We're missing, yes.
So you talked about the cut sites for at the neck and at the base of or I guess the middle part of the torso. Were the arms on that part of the torso?
No.
Okay. And did you note that there was a clean cut amputation of the right humeral head?
Yes.
And could you point to where the right humeral head is?
The humeral head is part of the upper arm, which is part of the joint. So it was the top part of that ball that was still there.
And so the arm appeared to be cut off at that point of the right humeral head?
Yes.
And then on the left side, there was another cutting at the lateral left clavicle?
Yes.
And could you point to the area where the left clavicle
The
is?
clavicle is the collarbone. So the cut was more towards the end rather than medium. It was towards the outside.
So the right arm was cut further away from the head than where the left arm was cut?
Yes.
Did you also x-ray this part of the torso and
Yes.
try to determine if there were any projectiles or anything foreign in there?
Yes.
And there wasn't?
No, there was none.
Moving on to the lower part of the torso, you measured that part of the torso to be 15 inches,
Yes.
and that was from the mid-abdomen down to around where the pelvis was.
Yes.
And if you could you stand up and just point to sort of those areas of the body from where you saw these cut sites of the mid-abdomen to the pelvis?
It was the first cut was around the belly button area, and the second cut was right about here. When you sit down very hard and you feel some pain, that's where it's called the ischium.
And so this cut site went from L2 all the way down to 1 inch below the right femur on the left side.
Yes.
And on that left side, where on the left side, it was a half an inch below the left hip joint.
Yes.
And again, these cut sites, they were clean cuts.
That's correct.
And this left ischial tuberosity that's listed in here, is that what you're referring to? That's sort of at the bottom area of your pelvis?
Yes.
And you mentioned here that all the amputation sites had cortical marks or striations.
Yes.
And those are little streaks in the cut surface that reflect that some sort of tool was used.
That's correct.
The skin at both of these sites, again, was jagged. It wasn't clean.
No.
When you perform an autopsy, you sometimes have to cut into the body, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And what kind of saw do you use to cut into a body?
Well, we cut the skin with a very sharp blade.
Okay.
But when you cut bone, we have an oscillating saw,
Okay.
which does not cut skin.
Okay. And an oscillating saw is sort of half moon shaped and just shakes so fast
Yeah.
that it's able to cut bone.
That's correct.
But amazingly, it doesn't cut skin at all.
No, it doesn't.
Other saws might cut skin differently or cut bone differently. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, in this lower part of the torso, most of the internal organs were missing except for part of the descending bowel and part of the female genitalia.
Yes.
And then this part of the body also displayed evidence of decomposition and marine activity on it.
Yes.
On the bottom here, you note that the amputation surfaces are secured for further studies.
Yes.
Did you make a cutting so that the areas where the cuts were made to this body were preserved?
That's correct.
And I guess, so going back to the shoulder, you obviously had a shoulder that had no arm attached to it,
Yes.
is that correct? And the outside of that shoulder was the cut side, is that
Yes.
accurate? And so you made a cut inside of that to preserve that section of bone, so one side was the cut side?
Well, that was sort of a half-moon-shaped piece of bone because the head is round, so it was. So we just took that as is.
Okay.
Yes.
So I guess for the for another area on the body, I guess for where the legs were cut off, would you cut above that cut site so that you'd have the section of bone where one side was the cut side and one side was the side that you cut?
Yes.
Okay. And did you mark those so that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The cut marks that we made were painted.
Okay.
Yes.
So you put dye or
Yeah.
painted the side that you cut?
Yes.
So that later it could be identified what side was cut by the person who committed this crime?
That's correct.
Additionally, you noted here that part of the left lower leg was discovered.
Yes.
Okay, and the status of this part of the leg is pretty decomposed. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And later, did you have a chance to review the autopsy that was then conducted in North Carolina?
Yes.
And that revealed that this was actually the right lower leg. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay. And that right lower leg was around 14 and a half inches long.
Yes.
And again, the skin was jagged, but the side of the bone cut was smooth. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
And again, it had those same striations.
Yes.
And you note that the discal cutaneous amputation site is at the ankle joint.
That's correct.
And so does that mean that there was another cut site at the ankle?
Yes.
And so basically this is part of a right leg that's a portion below the knee to the ankle.
Yes.
And the top of that, I guess the part that was closest to the knee, that was a cut through the bone there.
Yes.
To the knee. And you mentioned that went through the tibial plateau and I don't know how to pronounce that word, the menisci, which have two margins.
Yes.
Okay. And when you say there's two margins, the cut went through two different bones right there.
Yeah, two different bones.
And that's just directly below the knee.
Yes. One effect is basically through the lower part of the knee.
Okay. And so again, did you attempt to preserve those amputation sites for future analysis?
Yes, we did.
The bottom part of that leg, was that a cut site there, or was that, what did you see with where the ankle was located?
Yeah, that amputation, I did not see any obvious cuts to the bone, so it could be due to being eaten by sea or lake or water animals.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
so this body was pretty badly decomposed
Yes,
at this point.
yes.
And so there was no cut at the ankle part
No.
of his body, it was just the ankle wasn't there.
That's right.
After you conducted this autopsy, did you also retain some bone marrow so that DNA could be examined?
That's correct.
And at some point, did you find out from a Dr. Stimson that this body had been identified as Laura Ackerson based on the skull that had been found?
Yes.
Okay. And at this point, this is going back to the first page. This autopsy is being conducted on Monday, July 25th.
Yes.
And at this point, the only items that you have on that Monday are two parts of the torso and this part of the right leg.
That's correct.
Okay. Later, did you, I guess days later, did you then perform an autopsy on another part of this body?
Yes.
And is that State's Exhibit 279?
Yes.
I'm sorry, 369.
369.
369.
Your Honor, may I publish that at this
You
point?
may.
And this autopsy was performed on July 26th, is that correct?
That's 280, yes.
Okay. And so the first autopsy that State's Exhibit 368, number 273, for as your case number, that was the first autopsy that was the two parts of the torso and the leg.
That's correct.
And then now we move on to State's Exhibit A369, which is the autopsy that ends in 280, and that was a skull. Is that correct?
Yes.
Additionally, there was also a part of the left leg that you performed that autopsy on as well.
Yes.
And this was on Tuesday, July 26th.
That's correct.
When you received this head, did it also have 5 cervical vertebrae attached?
Yes.
How far down? You mentioned that the torso, the cutting was at C2, which is at the base of the neck.
7.
7, I'm sorry,
Yes,
C7, at the base of the neck. This skull had 5 vertebrae attached. How far down, could you point out to the jury where C5 is?
C5, I think, is within. It's in the lower neck. It's very hard to demonstrate it with a collar.
Yes, sir.
This
Looking back at this autopsy, so
this is C1, C2, C3, C4, C5 is here. That's C5.
so the torso that you had came to C7, and the part of the skull that you had vertebrae down to C5.
Yes.
Where is C5 in relation to like the voice box or larynx? Or
Well, it's just underneath it,
okay, just
yeah.
underneath it, but before
Yeah.
the top, the base of the neck.
the base of the neck.
And you noted that when you received this head, that all of the hair was absent except for a few strands of hair that were near the base of the skull.
Yes.
So you get this head in again, a body bag,
Yes.
and is there vegetation and parts of hair in there?
Yes.
The scalp, you mentioned in here, has multiple perforations or cuts from marine activity.
Yes.
And the face, you mentioned in here, is most of the skin was absent.
That's correct.
And the eyes, eyeballs cannot be identified.
That's correct.
And then on the area of the posterior right scalp, you noticed an area of hemorrhaging that was evident.
Yes.
And could you point to where the right posterior scalp is?
It's about here. The right side of the back of the head.
And the brain you listed on here was in bad condition. Is that
Yes.
suffice it to say? The skull had no fracture,
No.
and the brain was in such a bad state that as we can read here, it was essentially oozing from the nasal cavities and out of the mouth.
That's correct.
This area of hemorrhaging that you saw on the right posterior scalp, could you receive hemorrhaging in that area if the head was set a certain way and blood pooled there?
It's possible.
Okay.
Yes.
And this head was in a pretty bad state of decomposition.
Yes.
Are you able to discern from the fact that there was some hemorrhaging on a certain area of the scalp how that blood got there?
No.
Okay. And when we talk about hemorrhaging, that's just an area where blood is collected?
Yes.
So for instance, if a head was stored in a way, you could have hemorrhaging on one side of the head, and then if the head was placed a certain way in a river, you could have hemorrhaging in another part of the head?
Well, let me explain here. If the bleeding was occurred while the deceased was alive, that's what's called a hemorrhage. But if the pulling of blood into the soft tissues because of the body, the way it's lying, it's called blood extravasation. It's just blood leaking out of the damage of the dying blood vessels.
Okay. You list this as subgaleal hemorrhaging,
Yes.
and how deep is that hemorrhaging in the brain?
Well, it's not in the brain.
It's
Yeah.
outside of the
Yeah,
brain. is
that's
that
brain.
right?
Yeah, it involves the entire thickness of the scalp.
Okay. So it's between the skull and the scalp, essentially?
Yes. Well, it's into the scalp
Okay.
itself.
It's into the skull, but,
Yes.
but it's not an area that's inside the brain.
No,
Would this sort of hemorrhaging be fatal?
no.
Okay. Is this the type of hemorrhaging you can get if you played football?
Yes.
And can you say if that hemorrhaging occurs before or after death?
I cannot say.
So all you know is that there's an area of hemorrhaging on the skull that wouldn't have been fatal.
No. So that's correct.
And again, that skull had no fracture.
No.
And then you list on here that the cervical vertebrae still had some muscle and tendons attached to it.
Yes.
And you mentioned that the neck amputation involves the pedicles and the spinous processes of C5. If I could go back to that diagram of C5.
Yeah. These.
Are these, what are these called on the outside of the vertebrae?
But those are the pedicles running along. This is from the front. But if you look from the side, on the back, those are the spinous processes on the back.
So those vertebrae, are they almost U-shaped?
No, they're not U-shaped. They're shaped like a donut, but with things protruding on both sides and one from the top.
Okay. And those things that protrude, those are the spinous processes, the pedicles?
The ones on the back, those are the spinous processes. The one on the side, those are the pedicles.
Okay. And this head, where the amputation site was, where the cut was on C5, those parts that stick out, they were cut through.
Yes.
And again, the cut surface again had striations.
Yes.
And you mentioned that it was grayish black. You list in your autopsy here that this area was focally grayish
Black. Yes.
What does that mean?
That color is not normal for that part of the body. So there was some staining with some material, which was grayish black.
Did you x-rayed the skull as well?
Yes.
And you didn't see any bone injuries or osseous injuries to the...
No. No, I didn't.
And then both the upper and lower teeth were present, and the way that the identification done, as we heard from Dr. Simpson, was to compare those teeth to dental records of Laura Ackerson's.
That's correct.
Additionally, with the head, you also received part of the left femur,
Yes.
and the left femur goes from the knee all the way up to the hip. Is that correct?
Yes. The femur is the thigh bone.
The thigh bone.
Yes.
And that had an amputation site. Where were the amputation sites for the femur?
One of them was way up in here,
Okay.
and the other one was through the knee.
And if I could
Is
draw
that
your
good?
attention to, is this,
Yeah, one was, no, this is the lower.
okay,
Yeah, this one here. One was high up there, and then the lower one was through the knee, after about there.
and that was for the left leg, correct?
And yes,
And again, did you see those jagged skin edges on that section of the leg?
yes.
Additionally, there again, at the sites of the cuts, those were again clean cuts through the bone with striations.
That's correct.
And you noted on here here that the attached patella is at the knee,
Yeah, the yes, a
and
kneecap.
the kneecap, and you didn't notice anything else odd about the kneecap.
No.
Some days later, did your office also perform an autopsy on another part of the leg?
Yes.
And I guess for what we were just talking about, the autopsy number 280 that was State's Exhibit A369, the second autopsy, again, did you take those cutting sites and attempt to cut them with your own saw and stain them so you could tell where the cut face was?
Yes.
Did you do that for all the cut sites, or did you just do it for a couple?
All the cut sites. Even when I couldn't see any, I still took them.
At this point, after these two autopsies, the cut sites at the neck, at the right humeral head, on the left arm, through the torso, are all the cut sites the same clean cut through a bone?
Yes.
And actually, State's Exhibit 370, is this the third autopsy, the one that's number 299?
Yes.
And that was a left femur, is that correct?
Yes.
And this body part looked different than the other ones, didn't it?
Yeah, this was performed by my associate.
Okay, and this was on August 12th of 2011?
Yes.
And again, there were tool marks on this femur?
Yes.
And as part of these autopsies, do you request that the cut sites go to an anthropologist who can study the tool marks in the bone?
No, those are sent to people who have expertise in tool markings.
Mark First Witness.
You may.
Dr. Monroe, if we could hold these down for a moment. I show you State's Exhibit 328. Actually, that should be marked as State's Exhibit A328. This is State's Exhibit A329. A330. A331 and 332.
Can I see this one here again? Okay.
This is State's Exhibit A332. A333. A334 and 335. A337. A338, A339, A340, A341, A343, and then A250. Are all those photographs of the various autopsies that were performed on Ms. Ackerson's body?
Yes.
And are they all fair and accurate depictions of how that the cut sites and different locations of the body appeared?
Yes.
Would that help to illustrate your testimony to the jury?
Yes.
All right, this time I move to enter State's Exhibit 328, A328, 329, 330, 331, 332, 333, 334, 335, 337, 338, 339, A340, 341, 343 into evidence. And additionally, I move State's Exhibit A250 into evidence, but I would not seek to publish that one.
All right, let those exhibits be received. Exhibit 250 is received into evidence, but not for publication.
And Dr. Mamba, these obviously are very graphic pictures.
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd ask that Dr. Mamba be allowed to step down into the well to display these pictures to the jury and explain them.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, given the nature of the photographs, given the nature of what the photographs depict, we're going to just have the medical examiner stand down in front of you and show these photographs to you and point out areas of the photograph that illustrate. What illustrate means to help you understand what he's describing. If they don't help you better understand what he's describing, then you may not use them for any other purpose. So, to the extent that they illustrate his testimony, the witness may use those exhibits. Thank you.
Dr. Mamba, if you could step down. I show you State's Exhibit A328. If you could back up a step so that all the jurors could see you.
This is the top of the chest where the bone was cut. C7. These are the shoulders. And this is where the cut was, right in the root of the neck.
And if I can take this, does that display this is the cut site that you're referring to, that's a clean cut site?
Yes.
And that's what displays those striations or those tool marks? Okay, and so the neck would go here?
Yes.
This is State's Exhibit 329.
Now this is the lower part of the chest. And this is where this is L2, about the level of the belly button. The skin, as you can see, is jagged, but the cut on the bone is sharp. So the first one was, the cut was up here. This one, the cut is here, so we have this segment.
And on this, the cut mark is through this area of the cervical vertebrae. And then also you mentioned,
On the rib also. On this picture, it doesn't show it. It shows after the skin has been.
okay, so when the skin was pulled back here, there were cuts to the rib as well.
Yes.
And this is State's Exhibit 330 again. This is another picture from that first autopsy.
Yes. This is the from the right shoulder, the femoral head. Must have been in this position. This is the femoral head.
Okay. And so the jury can see it on this side. Again, there's another clean cut mark. And so what you would do is you would
And
go,
also, this is part of the clavicle.
so that's part of the clavicle. And what you would do is this cut
I
site.
just check out that bone. That bone.
Okay.
That was like an SBB
I'm sorry,
dislodged.
I couldn't hear that part.
But those bones can easily be dislodged without having to cut them out.
And that's because it's part of the shoulder.
Yes.
Okay. Again, this is State's Exhibit 331 from that first autopsy. What does that depict?
This is the cut on the other side, the left clavicle, the collarbone. The saw went through that, and the cut is nice and clean, and one can see some striations.
And just to be clear, when you cut a bone with an oscillating saw, it makes a different cut mark than any other sort of saw. This is State's Exhibit 332.
But yeah, this is the leg that this is the, what I usually can call the left lower leg, but it's the right lower leg. That's the knee, this is the ankle. The cut is up here, but there's no cut down here. It is just muscle that's generating.
And with respect to the ankle, I guess, is there the bones of the ankle, are they in decomposition? Do they decompose and the foot falls off
Yes.
easier than other parts of the body?
You know, yeah, it could be that also they were just eaten by marine life. The soft tissue was eaten and then the bones just
Okay.
fell.
So if the soft tissue decomposes or is eaten by marine life, then.
Yeah.
Okay. This is State's Exhibit 333. Is that from the second autopsy?
Yes.
Okay. And what does that depict?
This is a clean cut of the bone of the thigh. Again, there's so much decomposition, but the cut is clean. And if you look very closely, you see some striations made by the instrument.
This is State's Exhibit 334. Are those, I guess, side views of those cut sites?
No, this is through the knee. This is through the knee. That one was high up. This is through the knee. Again, the cut is clean. This view does not show you striations, but it's again cut through the lower half of the thigh bone.
And so, again, these are clean cuts, so you can see that I guess the face of both of these bones is cut at the same time. I'll show you State's Exhibit 335. Did you sometimes find tool marks in the bone?
I don't understand your question.
So if we look at State's Exhibit 335, is this another cut side of a bone?
Well, yes, yeah, this is on the cut side, but you can also see that there was an attempt to cut here, and for some reason, the cut was made here. So this is called a tentative cut, but this is the true cut.
And State's Exhibit 337, is this the base of the skull?
Yeah, this is the base of the skull. There's a bone here, but most of the skin is gone. This is one area where there was still some hair. This is the back, that's the front, that's chin area.
And with this picture at the base of the skull, is that one of the vertebrae that's present?
This after they've been taken out.
Okay, the vertebrae that's taken
Well,
out.
they was taken out. This shows right at the base of the skull.
Okay, and that's indicative of how the skull appeared when you received it?
Yes.
It was in a pretty bad state of decomposition?
Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier that the skin was actually falling off of the skull? Okay. And then, is this the last autopsy?
Yeah, this is the last autopsy. This one came just the bone tissue. The cut end is over here and there.
And that's, I'm sorry, that State's Exhibit A338. And that part of the body looks pretty different than the first two autopsies. And this is State's Exhibit A339. Again, is that a cutting from that bone?
Yes, this is again the cutting through the knee. Again, it's again cut. There's some dirt on it. I think it's from the mud in the water.
I'm sorry, it's from the,
Mud
Oh.
in water for some time.
State's Exhibit 340, is that another picture of the cut sites?
Yeah, this is a picture just to show you the striations caused by whatever instrument was used.
In that picture, you can actually see the little vertical
Yes.
lines in the bone. State's Exhibit 341, is this the head and the part of the leg as it was given to you for the second autopsy? Okay.
Yeah. This is the head, and that's the leg. This is the second autopsy.
And this is State's Exhibit A343, and I think
This is what I initially received. This is the chest area, this is the lower part of the body, and that's the leg. They came in three parts.
if you could resume your seat, Doctor. Doctor, after each one of these autopsies, you mentioned that you took cuttings of the cut sites. Did you take the body parts after you had examined them and then put them back in the body bag?
Yes.
Okay, and then eventually those parts in that body was flown back here to North Carolina?
Yes.
When you put the body parts in the bag, is there any way to keep them organized, or are they all put into one body bag?
Just one body bag.
And a couple more questions specifically about the
No,
skull.
can I just correct you? The three body parts that I first got, they were shipped as one package. The second, the skull and the leg is one, and the other leg is one.
Okay. And eventually they were all combined into one box that
Box,
was sent
yes.
back to North Carolina. With respect to the head, how would you, the neck area where the cervical vertebrae were coming out of the head down to C5, that was in pretty poor condition. It was pretty badly decomposed.
Yes.
And did you perform some sort of examination on the voice box or the larynx area?
Yes.
Okay. And at some point you opened it to look inside?
Yes.
Okay. Did you see, when you first received that, any signs of trauma to the voice box?
No, I didn't.
And it's your testimony that you opened it up to look inside it?
Yes.
How did you open it up to look inside it?
You cut it from the back. It's softer at the back.
And you cut it?
Yeah,
And
with the back, and then you inspect inside, and then you crack it open. And if it was cracked before I got it, it meant someone must have done it. But I cracked it to inspect it.
in your autopsy and the autopsies before you, do you note anywhere that you cracked the voice box?
I don't think I mentioned it, but this is the routine that we do. We don't write down everything that we do. It's part of the routine.
That neck area, the vertebrae, did you notice anything else about it that you noted in your reports?
What are you specifically referring to?
Looking at the second autopsy, 280 under,
280.
and specifically looking at the external examination of the head, you noticed that the cervical vertebral column still had the muscles and tendons. We talked about that.
Mhm.
You talked about the pedicles and the spinous processes. Otherwise, you didn't note anything else about the neck vertebrae, did you?
No,
Okay.
they were normal.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Do you have questions?
Yes, Mr. Zillinger, could you bring up the second autopsy of the head, the part of the head, back head? afternoon, Dr. Manbud.
Good afternoon, sir.
How was your trip?
I was up at 2 o'clock to get here.
Not well, I take it. Let me direct your attention to that portion of your autopsy that was done on July 26, 2011. Going down to the third paragraph, I see the sentence, the posterior right scalp has a 4-inch and 3-inch area scalp and subgaleal hemorrhages that are still evident.
Yes,
That's trauma, isn't it?
yes,
That's the kind of injury that you can sustain in a fall, isn't it?
yes,
For example, if Laura Ackerson fell backwards and struck the right back portion of her head against some hard object, that's what you would expect to see.
yes, yes.
Thank you, sir. That's all I have.
Okay. Questions?
Dr. Mambo, did you note a cause of death? Did you have an opinion as to the cause of death for Miss Ackerson?
No.
Okay, and is that because her body was in such a horrible state of decomposition?
And also being
Okay, and the
dismembered.
fact that she was decapitated and dismembered?
Yes.
Okay. You're just asked about an area of her skull. Would that have been fatal?
No.
And I believe you listed on the front of your autopsies, the cause of death, in your opinion, was homicide by undetermined means.
That's correct.
Nothing further.
All right, anything else? All right, thank you. Thank you, sir. Sure. Okay, next witness, please.
At this time, the state would call Kevin Crocker to stand.
Okay, thank you. Officer, can I be sworn, please?
Response to the testimony of this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I did.
Thank you. Would you state your name, please?
Kevin Crocker,
And how are you employed?
with the Raleigh Police Department.
And how long have you been employed with the Raleigh Police Department?
Just over 14 years now.
Were you employed on duty with the Raleigh Police Department on July the 22nd of 2011?
Yes, I was.
And that would have been a Friday, does that sound right?
That's correct.
And at that time, what unit were you assigned to within the Raleigh Police Department?
I was assigned to the fugitive unit, which I've been assigned to for about 3 years now.
And can you describe to the jury, if you would, what the fugitive unit is?
Our main goal is to look for persons that our detectives take warrants out for. We mainly concentrate on violent felonies. At times we look for missing persons, suicide threats. Sometimes detectives will have a person of interest that they would like to talk to, witnesses, possible suspects. They'll ask us to locate the person and find them so that they can interview them.
So you typically work in conjunction with other detectives?
That's correct.
And does that include detectives from the homicide unit?
Yes, they're, I guess you can say they're one of our biggest clients, if you want to put it that way.
So primarily your work would be with the homicide unit detectives?
Yes, yes.
And you indicated that part of your duty as a member of the fugitive squad would be to help locate various individuals that these detectives may have an interest in speaking with.
That's correct.
And you use various methods of technology as well as surveillance in trying to locate people?
Yes, we do.
Turn your attention specifically to the 22nd of July of 2011. Where did you go on that day?
We were told at that point in time that Grant Hayes and Amanda Hayes were persons of interest that homicide detectives wanted to speak to concerning the death of Laura Ackerson. They had relayed information to us that the two were in Texas and that they were on their way back to North Carolina. So they wanted us to see if we could locate them so that they can come talk to them. They believed that they were heading to Kinston, which is where Grant Hayes' parents lived at. And eventually, that's where we found them. When we first found the Ackersons, or I'm sorry, the Hayes' vehicle, which was a Dodge Durango, it was parked at a lawyer's office for a couple hours that afternoon on Friday. That's when we originally located them.
So on that Friday, the 22nd, when you initially located Grant and Amanda Hayes, they were at a lawyer's office in Kinston?
That's correct.
And that was in the afternoon time?
Yeah, late afternoon. I don't remember the exact time, 3, 4-ish, something like that, maybe.
And did you and other officers maintain surveillance, once you located them at the lawyer's office, maintain surveillance on them?
That's correct. At that point in time, I was maintaining surveillance on Grant Hayes' parents' house, which is at 1505 Holman Street in Kinston. Other officers were maintaining surveillance on the vehicle in the lawyer's office, and they were just relaying information to us, other people who were in the area over the radio.
And so when they left the lawyer's office, were you able to get information over the radio that they in fact had left?
That's correct.
And you indicated that you were at 1505 Holman Street, which had been identified as the parents of Grant Hayes'
That's correct.
residence. In terms of being at that location, were you sitting in front of the house?
No, I was approximately a block away.
And were you, what were you doing?
One of our functions is working plain clothes, unmarked cars, so we kind of blend in with everybody else. So I was just parked alongside the street, just trying to blend in and just observing the residents at that time.
And so that, at that time, you were in a vehicle that wouldn't appear to be a police vehicle?
No,
You weren't dressed in any way to identify yourself as a police officer?
no.
During the time that you were sitting there at 1505, did you observe the Hayes vehicle arrive?
Yes, I believe it was about 5:30 on Friday evening. I saw the Dodge Durango pull up to the house.
And who was driving?
Amanda Hayes was driving.
And could you see Grant Hayes when they rode up?
Grant Hayes was in the passenger seat, front passenger seat.
And at the time that the Dodge Durango driven by Amanda Hayes pulled into the Hayes parents' house, they pulled into the driveway?
I believe I think they did pull into the driveway, if I recall correctly.
And did they immediately get out of the vehicle?
No, they sat in the vehicle for a few minutes.
And during the time that they sat in the vehicle, did you observe Patsy and Grant Hayes, the parents, arrive home?
Yes, they arrived home shortly, a few minutes after Grant and Amanda arrived.
And what happened once the parents arrived there?
I observed Amanda Hayes assist their 3 children. There were also 3 children in the Durango. She assisted them in getting into the house. And then I observed Grant Hayes removing several items out of the Durango. He took them inside. There were some grocery bags, like a pink tote bag, and 2 large coolers that he carried into the residence.
And did you see the area of the Durango from which you removed those items?
I don't recall exactly where he removed all the items out of the Durango.
You've indicated that there were 2 coolers. How big did they appear to be?
I mean, not too large. I mean, I don't know what size that would be. I would say they're probably about like that.
And you indicated that he removed 2 coolers, which I think you've indicated about 3 feet wide.
Yeah,
give or
something like
take.
that.
a pink tote bag, 2 coolers, some grocery bags. Was he able to do that all in one load?
No, he made a couple of trips to do all that.
At some point did you see the Dodge Durango and whether it was moved?
After Mr. Hayes removed all the items out of the Durango, to the side of the house, they have a very large fence that goes around the house, like a chain link fence. He opened up the gates and he drove the Durango into the backyard and then locked the gate. Or shut the gate. I'm not sure if he locked it, but he shut the gate after he put the Durango towards the back of the yard.
At that point, would the Durango be visible from the street?
If you were on that side of the house, yes, but however, from the angle that I was at, I wasn't able to see it.
The coolers that you mentioned, seeing Grant Hayes carry into the residence there at the Hayes' home, what color coolers were they?
If I remember correctly, it was like a white top and kind of like a light blue color in the middle.
And at that point, after seeing Grant and Amanda Hayes and the children go inside the residence, did you see them come back out?
No, not that night. We didn't. We maintained surveillance on the house for several hours after that, at which point we were waiting for detectives to decide which approach that they were going to take, and eventually the detectives came to Kinston and approached the house with a couple of search warrants. At that time, we assisted them in approaching the house and helping them serve the search warrants.
And did those search warrants include a search warrant for the Dodge Durango?
That's correct.
And was it seized and towed from that location?
Yes, it was.
And where was it taken?
The tow truck company came. He hooked up the vehicle. He followed me back to Raleigh, where we took it to our old police station, which is right at the corner of McDowell and Hargett Street, at which time I turned custody of it to Sergeant Privatelli, who was the homicide sergeant at the time.
And to your knowledge, were there additional search warrants that were served that night?
Yes, they were. I don't recall what all they were. I believe one was for cell phones and like I said, I don't recall what the other ones were.
And that involved Detective Falk and Detective Hall?
That's correct.
And they arrived in the Raleigh area with the search warrants for the Dodge Durango as well as any other search?
That's correct.
But you left to go back with the Dodge Durango?
That's correct.
Did you have occasion to go back to that location, the Holman Street?
On Sunday, that we were told that more evidence was mounting that appeared as Grant and Amanda Hayes were their primary suspects. So once again, we were requested to go back to Kinston to locate Grant and Amanda Hayes and maintain surveillance on them while detectives continued to gather more and more evidence against them.
And so you say that was Sunday, so that would have been July the 24th?
That's correct.
And did you get there that evening of the?
We got there probably early afternoon.
And how long would you say you sat there and maintained custody?
I remember, I think we got there early mid-afternoon, and we observed. Actually, we observed Amanda and Grant's parents leave the residence. We followed them till they got to Goldsboro. They were driving an older pickup truck that was Grant Hayes' father's vehicle. We followed them to Goldsboro, where they continued to have vehicle issues.
What do you mean when you say that?
Their car kept breaking down.
Okay.
I observed Grant's father several times attempting to fix the vehicle. They actually went to auto parts place to try to fix the vehicle. At that point in time, they turned back around and went back to Kinston.
And in terms of the distance between Kinston and Goldsboro, is that
I want to say it's 30, 45 minutes maybe. I can't remember off the top of my head.
And if you were leaving Kinston and heading to Raleigh, would that involve going past Goldsboro? Is that
Yes.
Goldsboro in between
Yes,
those two
that's
points?
correct.
Back at, once they returned back to the Hayes residence in Kinston on Holman Street, what happened then?
We continued to maintain surveillance of the residents. We had seen Grant come out of the house, but we never saw him actually leave the property. So we knew he was at the house, and we also knew that Amanda was at the house also. So we just maintained surveillance until I believe it was the 11 o'clock news, when the sheriff in Texas was reporting that we had 2 people in custody, which at that time we didn't have anybody in custody. At that point in time, I saw Grant Hayes exit the residence. He appeared as though he was very, very worried. He was just smoking cigarette after cigarette after cigarette, kind of pacing back and forth. His parents were coming outside. It appeared to me as though his parents were trying to console him at that time. I did see Amanda come out at one point in time. So after that is when detectives were able to obtain arrest warrants for both Grant and Amanda, and they also got another search warrant for the residence. So they arrived back in Kinston maybe about 1 o'clock or so on so now that we're into the 25th, I believe.
Okay, so Sunday was the 24th, so just after midnight going into 1 o'clock on the 25th is when they arrived with the arrest warrant.
That's correct.
But what you testified to is that it had been reported on the 11 o'clock news that in fact 2 people were in custody.
That's correct.
And that was prior to any arrest warrants having, whether or not they've been issued, being served.
That's correct.
And so once the detectives arrived with their arrest warrants, were both Amanda and Grant Hayes taken into custody?
Kinston Police, with the assistance of their SWAT team, approached the residence, and Kinston Police took Grant and Amanda Hayes into custody.
And that would have been the early morning hours of the 25th?
That's correct.
Thank you, that's all I have.
All right, do you have a question?
Yeah. Were you present when Amanda was taken into custody?
I was in the area. I wasn't actually right there when it happened.
Were you aware that Amanda was searched after she was arrested?
Search incident to arrest. We arrest everybody.
That's routine, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct.
Were you aware that her driver's license was seized from her?
No, I was not.
Were you aware that a Borders bookstore card was taken from her?
No, I was not.
Were you aware that a patient ID card was taken from her?
No, I was not.
Were you aware that a social security card was taken from her?
I'm not aware of anything at all that was taken from her.
You were not aware of any of the various forms of identification that were taken from her?
No, I was not.
So you don't know what name?
Objection?
I hadn't heard the question yet. You don't know what?
So you don't know what name appeared on the identification that was in her pocketbook? do you?
No, I do not.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. The objection's overruled. Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. I'll see you, Ms. Dundown. I don't know that I see any more witnesses in the courtroom. Do you have?
We have some folks lined up at 2 o'clock, Your Honor.
2 o'clock? Okay, sounds good. All right, folks, we haven't heard it all. Keep an open mind. Don't form or express any opinion about the guilt or innocence of the defendant or any matter in controversy. Will you be able to start at 2?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Let's take about an hour for lunch. Come back at 2 o'clock. We'll pick it up at that time. Thank you.